Okay, so we call the meeting of February 20th, the Belgrade Planning Commission to order. Just for the future, people find this view the roll call.
Chair Nolan, Vice Chair Hippleton, Commissioner Abrams, Commissioner Barunda, Commissioner Briles,
Here.
Commissioner Geiger,
Here.
Commissioner Schulte.
Here.
Okay, we do have.
So, first item to be, meeting minutes, they were in our packet, they're online. Anybody want to, any comments on them first? Hearing no comments, motion to approve?
Motion to approve the minutes. Second.
Okay, all in.
Aye.
Okay, approved.
That leads us to briefings and discussion, compliance with the middle housing and state legislation. First time. So back to you.
All right, good evening, everyone. So I'm going to give a same presentation that Jeff gave to City Council recently about middle housing. This is a study session to go over some of the state rules that we have concerning middle housing. And then we'll be bringing actual code amendments to you probably next month. All right, so the goal of this presentation is to understand the statutory requirements for middle housing. And we'll be covering what is middle housing, compliance with state laws, next steps we'll be taking, and then any questions you may have. So first, what is middle housing? So middle housing is basically housing that is more units than a single family home, but fewer than a large apartment complex or condo building. And for purposes of the state legislation, it's units or buildings that have between 2 and 6 units. So that includes, or it's a single unit in case of accessory dwelling units. So you have accessory dwelling units, duplexes, townhomes, triplexes, fourplexes, 5 and 6plexes. And interestingly enough, Mill Creek is no stranger to middle housing. About 20% of our housing stock is middle housing. All right, so when we updated our 2024 comprehensive plan and we altered the zoning, we made some of the changes necessary to comply with state laws. So all of our zones now allow multi-family housing, although our low density medium density zones, they restrict the densities of those housing. So I mean, you could build, right now you could build a fourplex in our low density zone, but you'd have to have a huge lot because it's limited by how many units you can put per acre. And here's some examples of middle housing in Mill Creek. We have Nature's Landing on the left, and we have North Point on the right. And here's the Masters on the left and Amberley on the right. Some of these don't look like what you may think of middle housing, but these are attached units, even though they may appear to be single family homes. So in 2023, we did a middle housing survey as part of our middle housing study. And we discovered that actually several types of middle housing are pretty popular. In fact, when we asked what type of housing we want to see in the city, the top response was townhouses and condos, followed by single family detached, and then duplexes, triplexes, cottage housing. So there's definitely an appetite for some of these housing types, especially since they are more affordable than a single family home may be. So what do we need to do to comply with state law? First of all, which laws we're talking about? In 2023, the state passed 3 laws which preempted some local rules. And those include HB 1110, which expands middle housing, HB 1337, which eases barriers for ADUs, and SB 5258, which was designed to increase condo and townhouse supply and affordability, specifically by allowing rules for lot splitting. So what do we need to do to comply? I'm going to go through each of the laws and what we need to do. First, HB 1110. HB 1110 divides cities into 3 tiers, tier 1, 2, and 3, and the requirements vary by tier. Mill Creek falls into the tier 3 category because we have under 25,000 people. So we have to do a lot less to comply than some of the larger cities do. But what we do need to change is we have to allow at least 2 dwelling units per lot. We have to implement administrative design review for middle housing as opposed to design review board review. We need to alter parking standards near frequent transit. And we have to remove any regulations that are more restrictive for middle housing than for single family housing. For HB 5258, we only need to allow unit lots subdivision. And for HB 1337, we need to increase the number of ADUs we allow per lot from 1 to 2. We need to increase the maximum ADU size from 800 square feet to 1,000 square feet. We need to remove any aesthetic restrictions that are more strict for ADUs than for the primary dwelling, including door location. We need to limit impact fees. They can't be more than 50% of the fee that would be for a single family home. And we need to alter our parking standards, especially near frequent transit. So where does this apply? So these middle housing regulations apply to all of our zones, which are primarily residential. So neighborhood residential, medium density, high density, and so forth. And however, any area which had restrictions on ADUs or middle housing in place before July 23rd, 2023 is exempt. So if you live in an HOA and your HOA does not allow middle housing and it had that rule in place before this date, you do not have to allow it in the future. If you try to add that rule now, it's not allowed. We have not gone through HOA by HOA to see where it's allowed and where it's not allowed. However, some of the main ones we're aware of, including the MCCA, do not allow middle housing in many areas. Not all areas, because there is middle housing in the MCCA, as we saw from some of those pictures. All right, so here's some examples of what this might look like for a 10,000 square foot lot in the neighborhood residential zone. So currently you'd be allowed 1 home and 1 ADU, and if you want those to be attached, it would require a design review board approval. With the new regulations, you would be allowed to build a combination of 2 homes and 1 ADU, or 1 home and 2 ADUs. And any middle housing homes would be exempt from design review board review, although we could still review it administratively. And for ADUs, there are no minimum parking requirements near a major transit stop, which in our case would be the Swift orange and green BRT lines. And that's within half a mile walking distance. So here's the timeline we're looking at. We gave a study session to City Council earlier this month, and now we have this study session. We'll be bringing forth some proposed amendments next month, and we're shooting for City Council adoption in April or possibly May, depending how well the schedule is. And we need to have it done by the end of June to comply with the deadlines. Any questions?
What happens if we go past the deadline of June?
There are no penalties written into law. It's a good question. I mean, I'm not 100% sure what would happen. I don't know. Like with the comp plan, they can, if you don't get that certified, they can withhold transportation funding, for instance. For this, there's no penalty built into it. I'm sorry. I misspoke. There is a penalty. The penalty is if you don't comply with the minimum standards, the Department of Commerce created a model code which will apply. So if you don't pass your own stuff, the Commerce model code applies and overrides your code.
Now, you mentioned by June, is that by June 1st or by June 30th?
End of June 30th.
End of June 30th. Okay. So on July 1st, we will have new code.
We will have new code. Yeah. So I guess there's no penalty, but your code gets overwritten if you, yeah.
Okay. I have a couple of other small
No,
minor things
please.
if anybody else wants to go. Okay. Could we go back to, I think it was like the second slide?
Yep.
Okay, I just wanted to see. Thank you. So I wanted to understand, middle housing includes, when we say accessory dwelling units, that is middle housing. How does that affect the fact that it's on the same lot as, I presume, a single family home or something else, right? Does that modify the single family home, or we're calling it something other than single family home also, right? That was actually another minor comment I had.
Yeah. I mean, our code is typically refers to as single unit dwelling now.
Single unit dwelling, okay.
But I mean,
I
single
remember
family
that was a thing that we changed
Yeah.
the precise wording so that it's not implication about relations of the people within. Okay. So yeah, ADU, only the ADU is considered the middle housing and not the existing
Yeah.
structure on the
it's
same lot?
There's a bit of a fine line, a bit of a gray area for some of these. For example, you can have an attached ADU, so you can have a primary building and it can contain an ADU inside. So the difference between a single family home with an attached ADU and a duplex, there's really no difference when it boils down to it. I mean, there's maybe.
Sizing limit, right? The 1,000 feet on the ADU.
True, yeah, you could
versus-
have, the size limitations there, but
Are there different requirements for separate utilities between an attached and a detached? Or any requirements?
we don't have any requirements, but we
Okay.
don't provide water and sewer, so that'd be up to the utility districts.
So I know we also don't provide trash collection, but we set the contract.
Mhm.
So is that the sort of thing where we actually would set that for each unit? Per that, if, for instance, if there was an ADU that went in at a single family home, single unit residence, then do we then specify there will be more trash cans there?
Great question. I'm not sure the answer, but I think it would depend on the ownership structure, because the ADU could be, it could be, the property owner could own both the single unit, the single family home and the ADU. However, you could theoretically also condoize it, so it's two separate entities, and then you may have a different trash collection. Then you might have separate bins because they're owned by separate people.
Okay, so we don't involve ourselves with how each individual address interacts with trash collection.
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. So in that case, I don't think we would do anything regarding that utility. Okay. I think that was pretty much what I had.
The end. All right. Any other?
Actually, I did just
One
come
more.
up with one more real quick. You mentioned parking restrictions in two of the different bills, is there anything, and that sometimes there are differences as to, because of that tier in one of them, is there anything that because of one of the bills, we are held to a higher standard than the other one requires? Or is there any conflicts between them that we need to resolve before we can move forward?
Good question. I don't remember the exact specifics. I haven't written all our code amendments yet. I don't think there's a conflict between them. Specifically with the parking, if I remember correctly, it's if you have an ADU or middle housing within, okay, I believe it's middle house, I may be not 100% sure, but I'm 90%. It's middle housing, if you're a quarter mile walking distance, you do not have parking, no minimum parking. For ADUs, I believe it's half a mile, but I'm not 100% sure on that distinction. And then we also are able to, there are also restrictions on ADUs, how many parking spaces are required based on lot size. So larger lots, I think you're allowed to have, I don't want to get the wrong numbers, but there's a 6,000 square foot lot size, and above that you can have higher restrictions than the lower sizes. So like if you have a very small lot, there's no minimum parking for ADUs because there'd be no space. Or larger lots, we're allowed to have higher restrictions.
Can I ask you one more question then? So you mentioned that the 5258 allows unit lot subdivision. So you could end up with something that looks the same, that's condo-wise, as you said, two completely separate owners, or the classic mother-in-law apartment, right? And so each of those would have a different use case and potentially different power, water, sewer based on what those entities prescribe on these things. And then can you go back at some later time if you have your classic mother-in-law and split your lot then? Or just so we understand all the, because people are going to ask the council, and I don't need one more of those flyers going out through all of MCCA about, oh my God, the world's changing. So.
Yeah, so there's a couple things you could do. So without lot splitting, you can already condoize and have two separate ownership of, you have probably a shared like, yard, and then you could, but they could, like any condo,
Yep,
so
exactly.
then with lot splitting, yeah, so it's geared towards townhouses, but it can also apply to ADUs. You have a parent lot, and then you can split that lot into smaller lots that are smaller than the minimum lot size, and to allow fee simple ownership of your little spot. You can't further split that out.
Yeah.
It's restricted to the size of the parent lot.
Okay. No, good. No, thank you. I think it just helps to have it on the record and talk about, hey, there's a lot of flexibility. But as you not started off, 20% of our existing and a much larger percentage of our housing stock in the city is multifamily housing. So that's something always to remind people about our city.
Yeah.
Multi-unit residences.
Multi-unit, yes. Thank you.
Yeah, and specifically with lot splitting, it's the goal for that was to, our Washington's condo laws aren't always the conducive to producing more housing supply.
Yeah.
For ownership. So the lot splitting allows you to get those fee simple lots that are very, you own the ground under your home. You may have restriction. You may have responsibility to maintain common walls, but you own outright your little parcel.
Okay.
Is there any limit to the number of subdivisions within a lot?
You can only subdivide. So let's say you're allowed 4 units on the lot. You could only then subdivide it to have 4 smaller split lots. And you can't further subdivide it unless you can only subdivide down to the, let me start over. So if you have a lot that's allowed 4 units, you can only subdivide that down to 4 pieces, to 4 smaller lots. You couldn't further subdivide it. It's based on what the parent lot was capable of handling.
Okay.
So if you had, let's say you had a big lot that was 20,000 square feet, and you divide down to 2 10,000s, you could divide it again if, the density allowed it, but you can only subdivide to the the maximum density of the parent lot that's subdivided.
Okay, is there a minimum size of subdivision? Is that allowed within the state code that we could set? So for instance, would we be able to say you have to have at least a 250 square foot lot in this subdivision of this lot?
I'm not sure.
It's a
Okay.
child lot
I-
to the parent.
As a child lot to the parent lot, I
I-
guess you might call it.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's limited to like the footprint of the building that you, or the unit, or if there's a minimum size. I'll have to check, I'd have to look that up.
Okay, and I guess I'm trying to remember, are ADUs specifically single-story, 1,000 square feet? Or could they be, I don't know, 4 stories on 250 square feet?
So an ADU, it can't be,
I mean, I'm throwing out oddball stuff
yeah,
to try and understand our limitations.
yeah, so an ADU would have a maximum size of 1,000 square feet. And so you could have 2 stories or 3 stories. You go up to the height limit of your zone, which is 35 feet in most of our areas. So you could still build up, but you're limited to that 1,000 square foot maximum. We could actually allow more than 1,000 square feet if we wanted to, but the state requires that.
Okay, okay.
We're-
I think I've exhausted my silly ideas of how this could be done.
Mhm.
So, thank you.
Other questions? Okay, well, thank you so much. Now on to your next resolution adopting new bylaws, which you did provide us draft bylaws at the previous meeting for comment and review.
Pull up my. So all right, so it's really only 1 or 2 slides, but. So just a quick refresher, why new bylaws? So the city has set a goal for itself of creating a uniform set of policies and procedures for all of its boards and commissions. Planning Commission was one of the only ones that actually had existing bylaws. But the city clerk created the new bylaws. They comply with all the state laws that they could see and city regulations. And so they brought it up for Planning Commission to pass as the test case, I guess. We reviewed, or we looked at them on the January 16th meeting, or I mentioned that we would be looking at them to review. We received feedback from a couple of commissioners about questions they had, and the city clerk prepared some responses that I would put in the packet, So if, unless there are any other changes that you would like to see, we're ready to pass the resolution, which will rescind the old resolutions that 5, 6, and 7 from 1983 and adopt the new bylaws.
I just had one point of clarification. When we talk about the conflicts of interest, do we still have the exemption that, like, if there's a loss of quorum because everyone has conflicts, to still proceed under like the appearance of fairness doctrine? Because it says, if you have a conflict, you must leave the room. But if all of us, enough of us have a thing that we lost our quorum, is that still allowed in there? Or do we explicitly need to add that exemption back in? And then also, like, if someone declares some conflict and no one fails to object, that we could still proceed because it wouldn't then be considered a conflict.
Great question. I don't know the answer off the top of my head. Let me pull up the actual bylaws. All right. What section is it in? Do you know?
Article 8 would be
Article 8.
conflicts.
So your question was if someone has a conflict of interest and they recuse themselves and that drops you below a quorum, what, do you still have
So
a
that we're
quorum?
not, mainly I just want to make sure we're not being more restrictive than the state laws under the appearance of fairness doctrine with respect to conflicts of interest. So like in there, they have an exemption on that if you have a loss of quorum, then people with conflicts can be on generally it'll happen on small cities, not necessarily ours, but we're not huge either. I want to preserve that right for us to proceed with a quorum if we have too many conflicts. And also the option if no one objects when a potential conflict is disclosed to be able to proceed. I don't want us to write this to be more restrictive than what the state law requires with respect to disclosing of conflicts and proceeding.
Yeah, great question. I don't know the answer off the top of my head. The city clerk prepared these and I have only just read through them. I didn't look at them in that level of detail. I'd be happy to, if you're not comfortable passing it today, I'd be happy to reach out to city clerk and get that answer for you.
Could we just consider amending it just to say, with respect to any allowances under RCW 42.36? Because that's the appearance of fairness doctrine.
Yeah, let me,
So procedurally, if we are to follow the spirit of what's in here,
Yeah.
as I've read it, we probably shouldn't vote on an amendment tonight, and we should bring that back for next time, is what I would say about it. Now, that also would mean that if you believe we should go forward, first of all, the motion would fail to adopt the bylaws. If one member with our current quorum said that they didn't want to approve them as they are presented. So I think we do need to resolve this even before we,
Well, and I believe you said we're the test case, so.
this
Yes,
isn't
that's
an
right.
immediate need, right? Like, we're not holding up,
it's-
we're not costing the city $100,000 a week with this, right?
no, I don't think there'd be an issue if we delay another meeting. We do have a city council member here who may know if they are, is the city council itching to get these done? Okay. Yeah, so not, if,
So that's a reasonable question to ask, how this piece nests with the RCW 4236. I think that's good governance for us as a board here, but more importantly for all the boards of the city. And so if we're raising it, it'd probably be a great one to consider or bring forward for the city.
Yeah, because I don't necessarily think planning, but you get into parks and art and beautification and stuff like that, or whatever, and we are a small city, to be honest. I just want to make sure we're preserving all the options with regards to not being overly aggressive on the conflict of interest than state law requires.
yeah, and since we don't have a time crunch to pass this, staff's preference would be to come back with a clean motion and a clean set of bylaws and not have to worry about amending now.
But that said, other comments then, 'cause
Okay, great. I actually do have one question. If you could go up to the bit about the city council liaison. I believe that within these, we're stating that someone from city council has to be on here. And I wonder how that squares with their own bylaws. Can we force city council to do something without them passing the rule saying that they have to do it?
I'm sorry, I didn't follow that question.
Okay, so in here, if we could, I think it's further up. It's just in which we talk about, I'm sorry, yeah. Yeah.
slide over now.
Yeah, I think, because it was just, There's organization, talking
It's
about
on
the different
page 28.
roles.
28.
28, okay. Yeah, separately, the city council shall appoint a council liaison to the commission, which is all fine and good, but we're telling the city council they have to do a thing because of our bylaws. But bylaws regulate the body over which they are a part of, that they are approved by. So we're telling the city council, but we don't have any authority to tell them that they have to do that.
Sorry, what page are you on?
Page-
Page 28, 13, item 13 under Article 2.
Oh.
Article 2, item 13. That's a good catch. We shouldn't.
I mean, it does kind of,
I
we
mean,
could create
separately
the
in-
city council liaison position and talk about how we would regulate that, but we can't tell city council that they have to give us somebody, that they have to appoint somebody. They need to regulate themselves with their own bylaws that say that they will do that, or MCMC, actually, I believe would be the case.
Yeah, wouldn't it be more that if the city council appoints a council liaison, then here's its restrictions?
This is how they will fill the role.
Yeah.
This is how they will
It might be just some
applied
word
here.
massaging on who grants the authority to appoint.
Yeah, we can't tell the city council that they shall appoint a council liaison. We don't have the authority to make them do anything.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's in, the planning commission bylaws shouldn't be telling council that they shall do anything.
It could say something like a city council appointed, an appointed city council
Liaison.
liaison has these responsibilities and shoot, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, the way it reads now,
We tell them they have to, and then we're gonna tell them what they're gonna do here. And you better refrain from a lot of stuff.
I mean, I suppose the planning commission could tell the council that, but whether they choose to do it or not is really the,
We don't have the authority to make them do anything.
okay. Well, another good comment.
yeah,
Just
those are both good comments.
Other comments.
Yeah, I have a comment regarding RCW 4230 as well. This is the Open Public Meeting Act, and it says the agenda shall be posted online no later than 24 hours in advance of the start of the meeting. I think this would live in Article 3 where it doesn't specifically mention like when the agenda packet is available to the planning commission are posted. I believe last meeting we got ours on the 15th, which is the day before.
Mhm.
So there wasn't really a lot of time to review that packet. You know, most of us work during the day and then the meeting's at 6 o'clock. So I really like it like we did this time around where we get it like the Friday before.
Mhm.
So I don't know if that's something we are interested in adding to Article 3 where the agenda packet's available 5 days before the meeting or a week before or whatever that date may be. But 24 hours is pretty short for something that sometimes takes a little bit more technical review and to give meaningful comments on.
Yeah, good point. And yeah, and you were talking about, you were in Article 3.2 here. Is that,
That calls out special meetings and like when the notice is, but I don't think I see anything on regular meetings. RCW 4230 has the Open Public Meetings Act, which talks about the 24-hour notice though.
yeah, it's good point. I will say, yeah, our department, the planning department policy going forward is to provide it at least a week ahead of time to you, so the Thursday before the meeting. Last month was hopefully an anomaly. We had switched between Sybil and I and Jeff, and we put the wrong date on the calendar for the planning commission's meeting, the fourth Thursday instead of the third. So we that was our mistake last month.
So potentially adding into Article 3 meeting, something about consistent with the Open Meetings Act, RCW 4230, you know, agendas will be provided at minimum 24 hours, but the goal is to provide them, you know, 72 or, 4 days beforehand.
Yeah.
I think something like that would be,
That sounds reasonable to me.
because that ties us in if the act changes something else, but it also puts out, it's a courtesy to all the various volunteer boards that, hey, we'll get this thing early is the goal. And I don't know what the other boards are doing, but yeah, I was caught off guard because I sent the email last, hey, we must not be having a meeting. I haven't seen anything. Oh yeah, there's a meeting. You'll see an agenda. And it's like,
Yeah, same,
oh.
same. I didn't know.
So, okay. Other comments, questions? This is very good discussion and help. And it's important because, yeah, the other boards are going to follow our lead.
Mhm.
City council does not want the Parks and Rec board telling them you must provide liaison. We'll just dissolve the board.
Okay, I hear no other comments. So we will bring a motion forward then next month.
Well, yeah, we've got three good corrections to make.
Oh, just one thing. So we say our meetings are regularly scheduled the third Thursday. And then if it happens to fall on a fall holiday, the next business day. So if Thanksgiving falls on the third Thursday, we're meeting the Friday after Thanksgiving. We're canceling.
That's what it says.
Traditionally,
we have canceled it, right?
Mhm.
So basically in November, if we want a meeting, likely we're gonna call it a special meeting.
Yeah, we would, what we have done in the past is I think moved it to the first. I think that's what we did this last year.
and the
We moved it
Friday,
to the first Thursday.
The Friday is a holiday though,
the
right?
Friday,
Friday-
the
Friday
Friday
is-
after
yeah, is
Thanksgiving is
also-
also a city holiday. So
Okay.
it repeats on-
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So then it would move to Monday.
Deal. Other comments, questions? Okay, so we've gotten through our two briefing items. Oh, when it was B and C on our agenda, not A and B, but that's fine. Anything for the good of the order? Staff, commission? Okay, with that, not hearing anything, a motion to adjourn,
Motion to adjourn?
a second,
I'll second
Yeah.
that.
all in favor?
Bye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you so much.
40 minutes on the dot.
Woohoo.
Oh, man, we didn't over under it.